So hello everyone, I'm the Rosielum aka Soulweaver, and this is a little guide to show you how to build your character in Epic Battle Fantasy 4. Now, before I show you how to build your character in sort of like equipments and stats, I want to show you the philosophy behind building your character, so that you can do it for yourself later on. So, the most important part about building your characters is to make sure that your skills and specials are as powerful as they can be for every single character. Now, if you take a look at Matt, for example, and you take a look at all his skills, we start to notice something, and that is that every skill actually has type, and he received physical. Now this type is incredibly important because this tells us what type of stat this character needs. For example, if we want to have Legend to do the maximum damage, it does not matter how much magic attack we have, the only thing that matters would be our physical attack. And the power tells us how much of physical attack are we gonna put into damage. So what does this mean? If you take a look at the skills, every single skill here, even the ones that look like spells, like Iceberg and Cataclysm, they're all physical. Which means that all we need to do is we have to stack physical attack on Matt, and he has the maximum efficiency. We don't need any single bit of magic attack on Matt, because it won't do anything for him. He only needs physical attack. So we already have our philosophy for one of our characters, for Matt. We want to give Matt the most power possible by giving him physical attack. Now, if you look at Nats, for example, it's exactly the same, but with magic attack. If you look at everything right here, it's all magic attack. So, even if she has a lot of physical attack, it won't do anything. So you want to make sure that we give Nats the most magic attack possible. So now we have two of our characters already figured out. But what about Anna and Lance? And what about items like Ham that increases attack power? Should we give it to Matt or should we give it to someone else? Now if you take a look at Anna and Lance, they are both what I want to call hybrids, in that they have both magic and physical. But my philosophies behind Anna and Lance is that Anna is more of like a physical sort of character, and Lance is still more of like a magical sort of character. Now again, if you take a look at the skills, for Anna for example, her most powerful skills, which are combo shot for example, they're physical. Lumber is physical. We have Vines, which is also physical. Usually the ultimates of many characters are either magical or physical. Usually you can switch between the ultimates, like for example right here, you can see that I have an ultimate which is magic, and I have an ultimate which is physical. Now if I want to build Anna as a physical character, I give her lots of physical attack, and I would use Mighty Oak over Mother Earth, for example. Now what else does she have? She also has something over here, some wind magic, and this is actually magic, as you can see. The arrows, however, are also still physical, so pretty much most of it is physical. Only really the wind magic over here is magical. And apart from that, you only have to look at specials. Before we get to specials, which are also very important in building your character, I want to take a last look at Lance, what he has for skills. Now here, it's more obvious that he's a hybrid if you look at his skills. Like he has stuff like Unload, he has Double Shot, Snipe, everything is physical. He has Oblivion, which is physical. He has Crush, which is physical. Tank Guns, everything is physical over there. But then you look at the other stuff, like Bullet Hell, for example, Poison Gas, Plasma Field, Antimatter, and Hyper Beam. Getting texted again, whatever. This is all magical attacks, so you want to you can also build him either physical or magical. But his most powerful attacks out of all of those, which are his elemental attacks right there, and also his Hyper Beam, all of his most powerful attacks are all magical, which is why I like to build Lance as a magical character and give him magic attack. But you could also build him as a physical character and then use Unload with him. But the thing about Unload is that unless you keep buffing him, it'll only be effective once or twice, because it debuffs your attack like by a lot, so you can't keep on using it. Now, coming to specials, after you've set your goal on how to build each character, like for example Matt is physical, Anna is physical, Nats is magic, and Lance is magic. After you've set that, you want to take a look at the specials and try and give each character a special that corresponds with how you want to build them. For example, if you look at Matt, Matt is a character that I want to build physical, so I want to give him skills, and I'm not just skills, specials. I want to give him specials that are physical as well. For example, I gave him Spark and Big Spark, which if you look, are both physical. I also give him Giga Drill, which is also physical, and Flood, which is also physical. So I gave him a lot of physical attacks that he could use, because he gets a lot of attack power, so his physical attacks will do tons of damage. Now, deciding on what to give him, you can take a look at the skills and see what types of magic your character already has. Like I have Earth, I have Ice, I have Fire, I have Holy, I have Poison. So then when you go to specials, you can take a look at what does my character need. For example, I gave Matt something that is lightning because he doesn't have anything that's lightning. I gave him water because he has no water. And I gave him Giga Drill not because he has no earth, but because no one else could really use it. Because everyone else already has something similar that is earth, or at least isn't physical. Also gave him Sprite and Screamer, but that doesn't really correspond with him because he has physical or magical. I just gave it to him because I had points over. Now, if I wanted to maximize everything, I'd probably give Screamer to someone else. Now, the problem is, if you take a look at who can learn the skill, it's either Anna or Matt. And the problem is, both of these characters I am building as physical. So I can't even give Screamer and Fright to someone who has magic attack. So I just give it to someone who I think might be able to use it anyway. But I won't be able to do enough to do a lot of damage with it then. So, if we take a look at Anna, for example, she has a lot of earth stuff. And the thing is, she starts out with Gaia Seed, so you think you could just go back all the way over to Gaia Bloom and then Gaia Blossom, which is like cool, because she's always starting out with Gaia Seed, let's build upon that. Well, no, actually not. This is actually wrong what it's doing right here, but I was just too lazy to fix it. Basically, if you look at the requirements, I could also have taught this to Nats, and Nats has tons of magic attack, and if you look, it skills with magic attack. So if I wanted to maximize my damage, I'd probably forget the skill for Anna, and then go over to Nats, and then give her all the skills over here, so that she can use all these earth type abilities and do tons and tons of damage, because she is actually stacking magic attack. What also happened is I noticed that equipment wise, but I'm going to equipment later, I found out that I can't actually give Anna that much physical attack, even if I try to give her the most physical attack possible. So what actually ends up happening is I realized that Anna will not do that much damage. I realized that out of all of my characters, she probably has the lowest damage output. So what I did with Anna is I tried to give her some more utility. That's why I gave her Protect, for example, or Purify, or Cleanse. I also gave her Bind. So I gave her spells that I think someone else, someone could use if he doesn't want to do any damage. If I wanted to, I could also give her Siphon or this spell, but I don't want to pull too much onto her, so I still gave those to some other people. If you look at your limit breaks that are specials and can be done by multiple people, you still want to make sure that you give them an ultimate that corresponds with their type. For example, here I gave Anna Power Blast because it is physical. For example, I could have also learned her Absolute Zero and Tsunami, but they're both magic, so it wouldn't make sense to give it to her. I'll probably give it to Nats, because as you can see, Nats can also learn it, and Nats is gonna be a caster using magic attacks, so I would give it to her. Apart from that, we can take a look at the magic. Same deal here. The thing about the heals is, if you look at Heal More and Revive, for example, I just basically give it to whoever. It probably wouldn't matter if I gave it to Anna as well, but I just gave it to Nuts. There's a lot of these little things that are like more of like what you prefer or what you don't like on certain characters. So you can of course build your own character systems, like you don't have to give heals and revive to Nats, you can also give it to Anna if you want to. So you also have a little space that you can do your own stuff. The most important part, however, is really that you get the most damage possible and get all of the different elements covered, so that you don't get into a situation where you need a certain element, but most of your characters don't have that element, so you want to spread out your elements. Which I also did over here, like I gave her some wind, I gave her some water, gave her some explosion magic, all of which she doesn't have from her skills. Okay, and Lance. Once again, he's gonna be magical, so I gave him Death Metal, I gave him Power Metal, I gave him Iron Cannon, which is all magical, so I can make sure that he gets a lot out of that. And I also gave him Holy Fire, because he's actually my only character who doesn't have a holy type attack, and I want to make sure that everyone has a holy type attack. Okay, that's been it for skills so far. Like I said before, all of these utility spells like Barrier, Lock-On, Cleanse, Heals, you can basically distribute them however you want, it doesn't really matter that much. But coming over to Equip, if we take a look at the equips, now that we know how we want to build each character, Anna and Matt physical, Nats and Lance magical. In my case, you can also build Lance physical and Anna magical, however you want to do it. Now that we have chosen that based on our skills and our specials, and we have gotten the right skills and specials to use for our character, what we want to do now is we want to make sure that we have the right equip to capitalize on that. So basically what you do is you go through your equipment and you just look at what's the most powerful if you just want the maximum damage. But what is often the case is that you want to make sure to have the right element. Now if you play this on easy and normal, and probably even on the next one, I think it's hard or something, or epic, I don't know. No, I think it's hard or stuff like that. But you want to make sure at some points is that maybe you have some defenses on higher difficulties, but on the easier ones, like easy and normal, the defenses probably don't matter that much. So you can just do stuff where you don't even look at the defenses and just go with the most powerful stuff, which I did right here. I basically am demonstrating right now what you can do to get the highest stats. It doesn't necessarily have to be the highest damage against certain opponents because of how elements come into play, but just the highest stats you could get with your equipment. So for example right here, the highest damage on Anna's bows is Iron Tooth. And then I just went through all the other stuff, like here, I gave her drill bits, I gave her pirate dress, just to get the most damage out of her. The flares are an interesting part of equipment, but it's not really that important most of the time. Usually you get flares to make sure that you accommodate for certain weaknesses. But that really depends on where you are in the game and what type of stuff you need. For example, for the final boss I would get stuff that has holy resistance or dark resistance, and after that just get a little spread out of all of the other resistances. But there also sometimes are stuff with like targets badge or balance badge that just increase some of your stats, and that's pretty nice. But most of the time flares are really just take whatever you need. It's not that important to take a look at min-maxing there, just take whatever you think works and whatever you need defense-wise. Also keep in mind that you can change all of your equipment in battle, so if you run across certain enemies and you notice that you need different defenses, just change your flares out, for example, or change your dresses. Now if you continue this, for example here, once again, most damage, and most damage. And same over here, most magic attack, most magic attack, most magic attack, and so on with Lance as well. Apart from that, if you're playing this on higher difficulties, like even on the hardest difficulty, I think it's epic or something like that, you also want to take a look at a little bit of resistances. Now, like I said before, you want to take a look at where you are. Now, imagine you're like in a magma cavern. There's lots of fire enemies, maybe a bit of earth enemies, maybe stuff makes you burn. Then you want to make sure that you give a little bit of spread across your characters of fire resistance. For example, there's something that increases fire resistance right here, makes you immune to burn even. It's a flame badge for one character. Then you have some certain dresses, for example, that increases resistances, like this one, the red dress, increases 3 resistances by 50%. Most of the time 50% is enough to be able to get around, even on the highest difficulty. On lower difficulties you probably don't even need resistances at all if you make sure you're always buffed. Like if you just use something like Protect or Barrier, you get so many buffs on you that your resistances won't matter that much unless something really strong and big hits you. At least on normal and easy. But like I said, on harder difficulties like Epic, you probably want to make sure to get the right resistances. For example, I can also get Flame Skirt if I'm worried about fire. But apart from that, it doesn't really matter that much what type of armors you pick. Now weapon-wise, like I said earlier, the highest damage on the weapon might make your abilities very powerful, but it might not be the most damage you could achieve. For example, if an enemy is weak to Holy, for example, then of course it's better to take a weapon that has Holy element, even if you lose some of your damage. So that's also something to look out for, to make sure that you have the right elements. And once again, you could just go into a battle, like if you want to be really tryhard, you go into a battle, you scan the enemies, you take a look at their defenses, their resistances, what they're attacking with, and then just flee from the battle and change all your equipments around. Make sure you accommodate for all the resistances over here in the equipments and make sure you have the right elements on your attacks. Or you can just change your equipments in the middle of a battle and then make sure that every one of your characters is prepared for the battle ahead. This is also something that's important for the final boss, since it has multiple phases and always gives you some phases in between the big fights where like the God Cat shows up, which you can use to change your equipments around and make sure that you have the right equipment for the next phase if you know what the next phase is gonna be. So that was it so far. If you want to know which skills to use after you've built your character and everything, just take a look at the powers. Basically the power tells you well, basically how much of your physical attack you can use as damage. For example, right here, this is physical attack and has power 200, which means if I stack physical attack, it's gonna scale with a factor of 200. And if I look at something like there, it has only power 90. So if I would stack tons and tons of magic damage on Anna, I'd still be very weak compared to physical, because this has a power 200. Well, this, for example, only has 120 and 90. And here we have another physical which is 180 and another physical which is 220. So if I have physical, I probably want to use my highest power abilities. For example, combo shot, which I can use with any element depending on weapon which I have. And if I detect weaknesses, like weaknesses to earth or weaknesses to poison, I can use lumber or vines, for example. If you ever get into a situation where you notice that my character can't really do anything right now, maybe has no MP, maybe all of his elements do no damage, I have the wrong elements, he's about to die or anything, then you can do stuff like use some other abilities like heal or reflex, even though the character might not be that great at doing that stuff. Just get the most out of your characters. But that's just basic strategizing, that if you can't do anything else, just heal or something. Also remember to use your items, obviously. So, Matt, for example, he has very high power on almost all of his abilities, but he has the highest power if you look, it's on Legend. So, obviously you want to use Legend a lot. And Holy Sword also has tons of power, so if you detect anyone being weak to Holy, smite him with a Holy Sword. It's going to do tons of damage. Same with Nuts over here, you're gonna see lots of these abilities either hit one enemy or multiple enemies, and often an ability that hits one enemy is gonna be more powerful, like it has more power than an ability that hits multiple enemies. So you also want to make sure that if there's multiple enemies or one enemy, you want to switch your abilities around. Against multiple enemies, of course, use abilities that hit multiple enemies, but against singular enemies, you don't want to use skills that hit multiple enemies. You want to use skills that hit a single enemy. For example, right here, if an enemy is weak to dark, I don't want to use Pulsar if he's alone. If he's alone, I want to use Pulse because it has 20 more power, so it will deal more damage. And it's the same with all the other stuff over here. Like you see, Thunderstorm has 80 power against multiple enemies, but Thunderbolt against a single enemy has 120 power. So you always want to make sure that you have the right skills for each situation. So I think that has been it so far. Also something to keep in mind if you want to build your characters. Nat and Nats are always gonna be the most powerful characters no matter how you build it. Unless you give all the ham and all the stat boosting items to other people. But theoretically, if everyone is on the same level, Matt and Nats will still do more damage than Lance and Anna, just because their skills are so incredibly powerful and they scale so much with physical and magical damage. So if you have your items that boost stats, I don't have anyone any right now, but you want to make sure that you give all the physical damage to Matt and all the magic damage to Nats, even if you want to build Anna and Lance as a caster or a physical character, because Matt and Nats get the most out of these two stats compared to Anna and Lance. Which also you can also see in the stats that I gave Matt so much that he has almost 2000 attack, Nats has 1700 magic attack, and Anna's trailing behind on 900, even though she has times 2.3 on a modifier over there, and Lance over there has 1000 magic. So they're both trailing behind a lot. Just also because I gave all of the stat boosting items to other characters, but I still think it's best thing really to give Matt physical and Nat's magical, and ignore the other two so far and just give them whatever works afterwards, but focus on Matt and Nats. Matt and Nats are always going to be incredibly powerful, so make sure to use them. So I think that was it now. Yeah, I think that was it. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll catch you next time.